my live workshop, which has become a very special part of my week. I'm Miriam from Redemption Mamas. I'm creator and founder of a mentoring program with women, which I am very blessed and grateful to be able to join so many beautiful souls that are hungry and thirsty and seeking to be able to do something different in their life because they're not happy with where they're at. And I was in this place. I was in this place of just frustration and pain and, well, stuck. It's not a word I like to use, but it's probably one of the best that can describe how I was at that season in my life. In my 40s, I was stuck. I was unraveling at a rapid rate. Depression was very heavy over me, and it was horrible. I just thought it was my lot, and I just thought that's where I've got to be for the rest of my life. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't think it was possible to do anything. Followed all the normal paths of psychology and counseling, therapy. While there was some breakthrough, it really didn't break. That's the word that I want to focus on today. It didn't break the cycles that I was experiencing in my life. So I just want to say, if you're hearing this and you're listening to this, I want to speak this over you, that you're not here by accident. You're not here because you ended up just landing on this stream. You're here because you're hungry. You're hungry for something more. You're hungry for more freedom, more wholeness, more peace, more clarity, more life. And that was me. I was hungry for more. And something inside of me wasn't going to settle for the less and the pain that I was recycling through my life. And I wanted to be able to break living in that loop. If you feel like you're living in a loop and you just don't feel like you can get out of it, like reacting the same way, carrying the same old wounds, ending up in the same kind of relationships, hearing the same lies in your head that have you believing things that are not true about you and others around you, or just watching the same patterns show up in your family that your mother did, that you're doing, and now your children are stepping out in that same cycle, then I want you to know that you are not crazy. You're not weak, and you're not too far gone. You're human, and you're very brave for being here. You're exactly the person that I want to share this message with today, because my passion is to see women's hearts restored, their identity restored, their purpose fulfilled. And one of the biggest things I've learned on my journey is this: cycles don't break themselves. They keep going until someone stands up and says, it's going to stop with me. And that ended up being what I did. But it took some time to get to a place to understand that I could actually do that I didn't have to just let these things keep looping round and looping round and looping round in my life. It's not because we're broken. It's because healing and truth and grace and courage is something we need to embrace to give us another way to live. So today, we're not here to bring shame to your story, to my story, but we're here to bring light and freedom and to make room for something beautiful to grow out of our lives. And that's my heart and my passion for myself and for those that join me on this journey. I am so blessed and grateful to have done the journey with numerous other women that also decided, you know what, this cycle is going to stop with me. So let's talk about what a cycle actually is. A cycle is a pattern that keeps repeating itself. In fact, sometimes it keeps repeating itself so quietly, but so repeatedly that we don't even notice that it isn't actually who we are. We begin to believe that this is just me. I'm just this emotional, angry person. I'm just this person who can't seem to find a healthy relationship. these patterns or these cycles can be emotional, they can be relational, they can be spiritual, they can be generational. And it might look a bit like this, always being drawn into unhealthy relationships, shutting down when a conflict occurs in your life, exploding when you feel unsafe, people pleasing when you're feeling empty, perfectionism that never lets you rest and just be you, believing that you have to earn love and staying silent even when your voice actually does matter. Feeling like I'm just not enough. It doesn't matter what I do. I can never measure up. I'm just never going to be enough. Or fear. This is a big one for me. Fear that keeps you small, keeps you contained, keeps you too afraid to actually step out and do something different, to forge a new pathway. Or shame. Shame is a big one, and it keeps us hiding. It keeps us hiding for fear that others are actually going to find out who we think we are, because it's not who we really are. It's just a belief and the lies that shame will keep us hiding in that space. And sometimes the cycle's not even something that maybe you choose, but something you've inherited. Perhaps it's a way of coping that you watched as you grew up. Maybe it's a survival strategy that your family needed at the time, you needed at the time, or a pattern that was formed in pain, but now it's become normal. So here's a thought I want you to hold in your heart. Cycles are often coping strategies that become cages. I'll say that again. Cycles are often coping strategies that become cages. Something that once helped you to survive might now be the very thing that's keeping you stuck. For me, people pleasing was a cage, and I was stuck in that space, something I still need to be aware of today. For instance, when I was really wanting to be successful, I was really wanting to be the best mum I could be, I didn't realize that I was just always trying to please everybody around me. And in doing that, I was losing myself. My own daughter even said to me, when she was starting to journey into that world of relationships, she said to me, Mum, I don't want to be like you. And I was like me? What was I like? And she said, I don't want to lose myself. I want to stay true to who I am. I can tell you that stung and stung hard because there was so much truth in what she had said. I had really laid down a whole lot of who I really was just to please the people around me and keep them happy. But I didn't kind of realize because it had just crept up on me. It was a strategy that I had learnt from my childhood days, and I'm sure my mother had learnt from her growing up days because they were pretty harsh and pretty difficult. So this cage for me, this people-pleasing cage, was something I had to really face and come to terms with and say, I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be me, the true, genuine me. So how do cycles begin? How are they formed in our life? There's a few things that you'll find. A cycle is often formed out of pain, something that hurt you. Maybe somebody left you when you were a child, or somebody used power wrongly in your life. Maybe your home wasn't safe. Maybe words were spoken over you that should never have been spoken. Well, that is pain and hurt and wound, and those things create a belief. They create a belief that creates patterns and cycles that end up being a way that we live our life. So pain is one way that cycles are formed. Another is protection, self-protection. Maybe in your pain and your wounds, you learn to stay quiet to avoid conflict. That was me. You believed that you had to be in control and stay in control so you wouldn't be disappointed or hurt. Perhaps you believed you had to perform to be accepted. That was me. Performance became a big thing in my life, that if you didn't get the good marks, if you didn't get the top this or the best that, then perhaps you wouldn't be accepted. I wouldn't be accepted. You harden yourself. Self-protection is really just a hardening, putting up some barriers and fences around your life so you're not going to be hurt again, or believe that perhaps if you live that way, you won't be hurt again. But like me, maybe you just think you have to say yes all the time so you won't be rejected. That was a big pattern and cycle for me. And maybe when the pain was there and the wound was there, that it might have been wisdom, it might have been a way of survival. But here's the truth about that. Your patterns only make sense in the context of your pain. You don't keep repeating cycles because you're broken beyond repair. You repeat them because a part of you is still trying to keep you safe. So while this is a survival strategy, it's not a strategy for life. It's not a strategy for living life to the full, free, healed, and whole from the inside out. So there's pain, there's self-protection, and then another way cycles are formed is through inheritance. And this was quite a revelation to me. Some cycles are not things that you create, and they're not things you choose, but they're things that have been handed to you, generational. You might have watched how love worked in your family. Maybe there was manipulation and control was the way that love worked in your home, or how anger was handled. You might have seen anger in your parents and maybe the generation before them, and now you use anger as a strategy in managing and looking after your pain and protecting yourself. You might have seen how women were valued in your previous generation and believe that that's the way you've got to be as well. And for me, that was definitely something that my mother taught me, that I just had to lay down my life for my husband. I had to lay down, not question, not challenge. And the truth is that not everybody has got it perfectly right. My husband or my father, but the whole belief system that I was brought up with, how women were valued and how women should be treated and how they should behave, was something that took me some time to be able to really break out of. Maybe in your family there were things that were not allowed to be spoken. There were secrets that, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the alcoholic grandfather or the sexually promiscuous grandfather. We don't talk about that. They're just, skeletons in the cupboard that we don't bring out. You would have been modelled in your family how grief should be carried, and that's a generational thing that can come from generations gone by, where there's been some trauma, some shock, some pain. And so that is how the generations have handled grief, and you're taught how to handle grief that way. And it's not always the best way. It's not even sometimes a good way, but it's something that you've inherited. You didn't choose for it. It's just how life worked. Conflict, my family were a family that conflict was got to be brought out into the open and just get it all out. In my husband's family, conflict was to be avoided at all costs. So you can imagine when we came together and I bring my perspective and he brings his, that there were some challenges because this was an inherited thing. We both inherited something very different. Two became one, and we were like sandpaper rubbing on each other. It's just a pattern from our generations that we bring into our own life, and typically we hand over to the next generation as well. So, whether we realize it or not, we learn to live inside of what we've seen, what's been modeled to us. And the good thing is, though, that our inheritance does not have to be our identity. Your past does not have to be your future. Generational cycles and breaking them in my life was a huge part of my journey and a huge part of my healing that brought me into a place that instead of being stuck in these cycles, I could break free, find freedom to live my life, not just how I wanted to, but in the calling and the purpose, fulfilling the assignments that I had from heaven, partnering with heaven in those cycles. I had to break generational cycles of fear, a lot of fear over my life, a lot of fear of not feeling like I could do certain things because what if I failed? I was a people pleaser, and if I couldn't please those people because I stepped out and did something that was scary, then I might actually disappoint the people around me. And so I held back, and I can see that pattern over my generational line as well. Rejection, that was another big generational cycle that I needed to break in my life. There'd been a lot of rejection over my parents, a lot of pain that they had endured in their own lives, being rejected even from family. And in that space, they brought to me, this is how you deal with rejection. And it had me hiding, it had me walking out of expecting to be rejected. And so I didn't even have a potential to be able to break out of that because I was living from rejection, fully expecting to be rejected, that cycle to be repeated in my life. Control and manipulation, that was another big generational cycle that I needed to break, that the fear and the disappointment and the rejection that had been experienced down my generational line meant that everyone just felt they had to control everything around them. And so that was a pattern that I adopted and I took on board. And I'm so grateful to be able to break free, break out of that, and not have to live in that cycle of being stuck. I was just believing everyone's going to reject me, and I would posture myself for it. So pain, self-protection, and the generational cycles that we need to break are what brings about cycles in our life. And cycles don't just keep repeating, they actually rob you. They rob you of your peace. They rob you of your confidence. They rob you of your health. They rob you of love and connection, of joy and clarity and purpose. I could go on. Cycles are a robbery over our lives. And something really important about that is that what we don't heal, what doesn't get healed, gets repeated again and again and again. And what gets repeated in our lives gets taught. It's teaching us that we just have to be here. We just have to, this is us. And I believe that I was just this broken person and I would have to stay in that place of brokenness. But if a cycle stays unbroken in us, it's not something that we have to agree with and stay living from. It can become a lesson for those around us, like my daughter who said, I don't want to lose myself like you have, Mum. So while you might experience cycles in your life that are keeping you stuck and looping around, this is not to condemn, it's not to shame, it's just a reality that has to be faced. And this is why it matters so much to face it. Because when a woman breaks a cycle, she doesn't only just change her own life, she changes her lineage, she changes her family line. The legacy you leave when you choose to break cycles in your life is so incredibly powerful and dynamic. So, I want to share about one of my daughters recently is experiencing some quite challenging things in her own life. And I have to say, I've just been so admiring of her managing and coping with this. And I was talking with her about it, and she said to me, "You know, Mum, if I hadn't have done what I've done on this journey of breaking cycles, of facing the generational things over my life and praying through them and allowing them to be healed, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today." And I was honestly very blessed to hear that, but it's because she actually came home and saw me in her late teens, early 20s doing this journey. And one day, my friend that was working with me came to my house, and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing here today? I wasn't expecting you." And she said, "I'm not here for you. I'm here for your daughter." And so she spent time with my daughter, and this ongoing journey of her pressing in and breaking the cycles in her own life that of pain, of self-protection, of generational issues started back then in her early 20s. And how beautiful that the fruit from my own life was something that just enabled her to be able to make the choice of going down that pathway as well. So I not only broke those patterns and those cycles over my own life, but I'm seeing my children break cycles and patterns in their own lives. And I'm very, very grateful and blessed. So when we start to do this, when we start to get into this pattern of breaking cycles, a cycle starts to break when three things come together. Firstly, is awareness. Something in you finally says, "Hang on, this keeps happening." It might be the moment you catch yourself like in the middle of a reaction, like, "Whoa, this is what I always do. I always get angry. I always yell." Or it might be in the middle of a choice. It's like, "Why do I keep going back and doing that thing that I said I would not do ever again?" Or it might be in the middle of a part of your life story that you realize, "Whoa, hang on, this has been my story for way too long." So awareness is powerful because you can't heal what you aren't willing to name. And when you can actually speak it out and go, "Oh my gosh, this is something I don't want. I don't want to keep repeating this. I don't want to keep living this way." Then that's when a cycle can be broken. So getting aware is step one. Next is truth. Truth is a disruptor of cycles. Truth says, "This is not love. The way you're being treated is not love," or "This is not who I am. I should not be this fearful, rejected woman." So truth disrupts the cycle, or "It's not what I'm created for. I'm not created to be this depressed, grieving, miserable woman. It's been a lie that's run too long in my life." And so identity can't be restored without us facing the truth. Because you can't live a new life while you're believing the old lies about who you are. Truth is not just information, it's permission to get free. So, getting aware, facing the truth, and then making the choice. This is a brave moment. It's not the easiest moment, and it can often be a very messy moment, but it is a brave one. You know, it's a choice that says, "I'm going to respond differently. What would that look like? How am I going to break this cycle in my life of the way I'm responding? Or I'm going to walk away from what is hurting me and harming me." And that is a very hard choice to make. But when we make that choice and we separate from whatever hurtful, painful things that are there, creating that space is where we can actually see the truth and we can find out maybe how we need to process the life that we're living and breaking the cycles or the patterns that we're in. Stepping away is not something to be ashamed of. Stepping away is something that is a very brave choice to make. Asking for help. Some things we can't do on our own. And it took me some time before I was willing and able to reach out and ask for help. It was only when I saw a friend of mine in very similar circumstances go from a very dour, depressed face to looking joyful and having light and radiating. I was like, what are you doing? What are you taking? I want a bit more of that. And so, following along with what she had done and reaching out and asking for help, that was a life changer for me. As I did that, I started to be able to stop agreeing with the lies I was living. I was able to step in and do some of the healing work and risk some of the change. And it was a risk to change some of the ways that I was living and relating and communicating to others. Freedom always costs you something, but staying stuck will cost you even more. But freedom requires a new identity for us to live out of. So breaking a cycle is not often just this one aha moment. It can start that way, but it actually is a journey. It's a journey of staying free, staying in that place. So some of the things that help me, particularly from stopping those cycles from coming back, is being in community. Healing doesn't thrive well in isolation. It thrives where there's safety. It thrives where you have the community, you have others around you that can cheer you on. And so the mentoring program that I have and I work with women through, it just enables them to not have to do this alone. I was so grateful that I didn't do this alone. I did try for many years to just try and figure it out myself. But once I came to that conclusion, you know what? This isn't working. I need some help. That was a really powerful thing. And then when you're in community, someone else can say to you, someone safe can say, I see you, I'm with you, I hear you. You don't have to walk this journey out alone. So community is a very powerful process and a powerful piece in breaking cycles. Boundaries. Boundaries are incredibly important. Boundaries are not punishment. They're not protection for what they're protection. They're putting a fence around something that what God is growing inside of you. The protection of your heart, protection for stepping out of the shame, out of the pain, and allowing God to grow something beautiful. Healing is a garden. It's a garden that is beautiful and can flourish as we pull out the weeds and we get to the root on the causes of what's going on. We can grow something truly beautiful. The boundaries are the fence, and the fences are what is going to stop those weeds, stop those things on the outside from taking over in our life again. So, community, boundaries, renewing our mind. Our mind loves to keep those cycles unchallenged. Repeat, repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And these are the thoughts that we need to challenge, that we need to renew. When a lie comes up, you learn to say, that's not the truth. That's not right. That's not who I am anymore. That's not what I'm choosing. Renewing our mind is a very powerful part of the process. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is a huge piece. It's not excusing what's happened. It's not excusing the people for what they've done, but it's releasing the hold that it has on your future. Forgiveness is a cycle breaker because it stops the past from driving you. It stops the past from pushing you into those same old patterns and cycles. And then just being courageous and brave to be uncomfortable. This part really matters. Sometimes A cycle can feel like home. It can actually feel like this is where I belong, even though it hurts, even though it's painful. Freedom can feel really weird at first, not very familiar, but you don't go back because freedom feels strange. You just keep practicing that freedom until it feels honest, it feels genuine, and it feels authentic. Healing is a journey. It's not just a one moment. It's not just a linear process, but it's a wholly sanctified process of bringing out everything that needs to go, everything that needs to change, all the cycles that need to be broken. You know, when cycles break, when you break cycles in your life, healing comes. Your voice returns. Your maybe soft, gentle spirit becomes a strength rather than something to be jumped all over. Your heart can open up without fear of someone owning it or hurting it or trampling on it. You can choose love without being afraid of losing yourself. You can walk in clarity. You can stop yourself from always shrinking back and hiding. You can stop yourself for even apologizing for existing. You can handle your worth, and you can make others, you can command respect of others who maybe don't see the worth of you as you truly, truly are. You become somewhere that you can free yourself because you're no longer stuck in that rinse and repeat cycle going round and round, round and round over again. The purpose The purpose is not something you force. Breaking cycles is not something you force, but it's something that will give you purpose that flows from an identity, identity that is restored, that can rise naturally because you're no longer living as the person who was hurt and wounded, and but living out of who God says you are. So you don't just break a cycle, you actually build a whole new inheritance and you become something completely different. I want to take a moment just right here now, not to pressure, not to embarrass, but to make space for your heart to be honest. And I want you to think for a moment, what cycle are you tired of carrying? Maybe it's a cycle in your relationships. Maybe it's a cycle in your thinking. Maybe it's a cycle in your family. Maybe it's something that you've never actually said out loud. And I want to ask you, what would freedom look like for you? Not for someone else, not the perfect version, just the real one. What would really change in your life if your heart was restored, your identity was clear, and you really believed you were worthy of love, that you stopped living small and hiding, you stopped surviving and really started living? Just sit with that for a moment, because often the first crack in a cycle is the moment that a woman tells herself the truth. Breathing has become such a powerful part of my own journey over the last year or so. The cycle, the breath of life, the breath gives us life. And as I have been learning some different strategies of breathing, it's helped me to really connect with some truth in my own life. So I want to just give you a moment to slow down, to rest. Just close your eyes, open your eyes, whatever you're most comfortable to do. Just lie down, sit down, put your feet on the floor. And I want you to ask yourself, in your breathing, get the breathing started first. So one of the patterns that I've been enjoying is the long release breathing, where you breathe, let's breathe for 4, hold for 4, and then breathe out for 6. So we breathe out longer than we breathe in. And what that does is it actually helps the parasympathetic nerve to calm, to come out of stress and anxiety, and to come into rest. So let's try that. So we're breathing in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll feel clarity come to your head, the oxygen in your brain. And as you're releasing out. Let's go again. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. As you do this cycle, just keep it going. Breathe in and ask yourself, what are you tired of carrying? What cycle are you tired of carrying? Breathe out. Breathe in. Ask, what cycle am I tired of carrying? Hold. Release. And again, what cycle in, breathing in, am I tired of carrying? Hold. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. While you are doing this, your heart, you are creating space for your heart to speak truth, to speak honesty, to reveal to you what maybe you're suppressing or you're hiding from or you're not really wanting to connect with, because it's hard. It takes courage. It's something that we've got to be so brave to be able to step into. I just want to say that whatever came to you in that moment, and if nothing did, then go and take this process. Spend 10 minutes just sitting in that quiet space, letting your breath release and calm you down. You know, you might not be able to rewrite the chapter from where you've come from, but you absolutely can decide what chapter comes next. And maybe the bravest thing you'll ever do is to live a life that looks different from what hurt you. Breaking cycles isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming free. So today I want you to hear this. It stops with you, not because you're alone, but because you're courageous, because you're waking up, because you're choosing healing. You're saying yes to truth, and you're letting beauty grow where pain used to live. When a woman's heart is nurtured, something beautiful can grow, even out of that contrariness, even out of our wounds, even out of our painful, nasty history. You are not your cycle. You are not your past. You are not what happened to you. You are restored. You are becoming. You are called. You are free. You can be healed from the inside out. I want you to take some time to think and ponder this. Go away and journal. Create space. Create space for that beautiful heart of yours so it can be healed and whole from the inside out. Well, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts today. Be blessed and have a great day.